Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you once again. Today being Thursday, October 20th, 2016. And again, the website boxofsunglasses.com, Facebook, okay, Rob Roselli, Twitter at Rob Roselli, and email info@boxofsunglasses.com. And also my YouTube channel, Rob Roselli 1. And all the links, if you go to the homepage of my site, boxofsunglasses.com, again, that's one word, you'll find the links to the Facebook, loop back to this, and as well as the YouTube channel. Okay, and on there you'll find my latest book, The Un-American Genocidal Complex, which will come up again tonight. Excuse me, not my latest book, my second book, and this isn't the latest, Pleased to Meet You, which is really the story, the history of the world going all the way back to the Garden of Eden and culminating with this multi-named, multi-birthplace scam, this phantom, this mist in the White House known as, I'm calling Pharaoh Barry, as he is in charge of this modern-day Egypt or Mystery Babylon, this nation formerly known as the United States, as we careen down the world to World War III. Okay, so now that the presidential clown show is over, Donald Trump versus Hillary, I'm not totally against Donald Trump, but he's in way over his head, okay, way over his head. All right, I don't know if Donald Trump is going to have his Damascus Road moment, just like Paul the Apostle in Acts chapter 9. I certainly hope so. And of course, if he does, he would then have to become a fundamentalist Christian, in which case he would be bounced out of the presidential race faster than they're trying to bounce him out right now. Okay, and that's really the only thing that's going to save this nation at this point, and it ain't happening. So I guess what I'm saying is we are essentially finished as a nation. And actually, we've been finished for a while. What's happening right now between Queen Jezebel and Pharaoh Barry is the manifestation of that termination of the terminal phase of what was the greatest nation in the history of the world. Okay, and in on the past several shows, we have gone through Revelation 17 and 18 line by line, and I make the case that there is no other nation comes close to fitting the description of Mystery Babylon other than these very United States, and that's not really a good thing if you read those two chapters. And also you can go on to my site, and the table of contents on the bottom is the Mystery Babylon ebook, which is more of an overview, and then there's the Mystery Babylon page. If you scroll through to the table of contents, you can read all about the Mystery Babylon USA, the case I'm making. And current events are pointing to this, by the way, the way that I've illustrated it, as I've been saying. Okay, you're not gonna get the comic book Antichrist. You're not gonna get the rapture. You're not gonna get the two witnesses. Okay, it's all nonsense. Okay, most of Revelation is meant to be symbolic and figurative. Okay, and I know there's many different camps and many different thoughts. And there's people out there that say I'm full of it, and that's fine. I just, point to what's going on in reality. What's going on out there in reality world, and what's happening out there in reality world is that the Russians are moving their northern fleet into the Mediterranean. The Russians are moving large amounts of troops. They're massing troops on their borders. They're sending more of their air force down to Syria. Okay, as the United States, the exceptional people, okay, look to and led by their Pharaoh, this ghost in the White House, this multi-named scam, Pharaoh Barry, look to exert their influence all over the world via a military, which is an insane exercise, by the way, just as an aside. Okay, people keep calling the United States the richest nation in the world. Okay, really? All right, a nation with an online deficit of 20 trillion and counting, or whatever it is, and 100 to 200 trillion with a T on what's called offline budget deficits, and we're the richest nation in the world. I mean, what a blanking joke that is. Okay, I can't believe there's people out there that still say that. Okay, This, of course, from the same crowd that tells us, the 100 million people not in the workforce, which essentially means we have a 30 to 40% unemployment rate in this nation. They got the audacity to get on the TV and say, it's 5% unemployment. A lot of this nonsense, a lot of this confusion, I mean, believe it or not, is encapsulated in this book. Okay, it goes through the whole thing, and really in a palatable format. It kind of tries to, when you step back, and I know it's confusing, and it's seemingly a lot of just mass confusion, and that's not a surprise, because the Prince of Darkness, Satan himself, was in charge of this whole mess. In fact, he's in charge of the world. If you go back and you read Matthew 4 and Luke chapter 4, and if you go on another page on my site, the Robert Christian page, okay, just start to see what I'm talking about, okay? Because what I aim to do on, at least for my little part, is to bridge the gap between the Bible and current events and history and what's been going on, what's going on currently and what will go on, okay? Everybody's got their little niche and this sort of thing. Some are into the UFOs, some are into this Nephilim and Genesis 6 and all this other kind of stuff, and that's fine. But I'm looking to kind of tie things together, okay? And that's just kind of where I've found my little niche, and that's the approach to the show and, in fact, my website. So I will delve into those topics in a as much as I need to. But if you're waiting, you're not gonna, in other words, you're not gonna find on here, Area 51, okay, the Nephilim, the giants around the world, okay, and this sort of thing. That's all well and good, and I'm not saying that's not important information, and it helps me personally to edify and corroborate a lot of things, answer a lot of questions for me, okay. But in the grand scheme of things, I'm not so sure, okay. First of all, people aren't necessarily going to believe it, okay. Most people can't even buy the fact that our entire economy, with its Federal Reserve overlords, is nothing but a loan sharking operation. It's a setup. It's a scam. Okay, some people can't even. It's a mathematical scam. It's a relatively easily proven mathematical scam. I mean, I'm not even talking, high school level mathematics here. I'm just talking basic. You go into debt. Somebody loans you money at interest. And then you just, at that point, you just mathematically can't pay it back. It's just a mathematical certainty. I mean, I don't, that's not conspiracy theory. That's not anything. It's just a mathematical fact. I mean, if I'm the loan sharking operation, parentheses, the Federal Reserve, and I loan you money, and I'm the source of your money, and then I charge you interest on it, I mean, how are you going to pay me back? I mean, just stop and think about that. Forget all the theories. Forget the Fox News. Forget the idiots on CNBC and these maniacs, this Kramer and these Fabian socialists and these morons coming out of Harvard Business School. And just forget all that. Forget the whole they live scenario. Another parentheses, by the way, that's the movie you really need to watch to understand where I'm coming from. John Carpenter's They Live. But anyway, forget all that and just think about it. Okay, the Federal Reserve and its compatriot organizations, the Bank of International Settlements and the International Monetary Fund, are nothing but loan sharking operations. Okay, so again, if I loan you money, if I loan you $10 and I charge you 10% interest on it, and you go out and spend that money, how are you going to pay? How are you going to pay me back? The only way, now you spent that money now because you got to go out and that's what your money. You think about it, it's your money used to go out and you buy food, gas for your car payment, your mortgage, this sort of thing. You go out and spend it. Well, year 2 rolls around, let's say, and how are you going to pay me back? You owe me $10, now you owe me $11 because I'm charging you 10% interest on it. But you got to keep the scam going. You got to keep your lifestyle going, and really the only way to do that is to borrow another $10. Now that gets added on to the previous $10 plus interest. You're just digging yourself a mathematical hole, okay? And at some point, it all needs to come crashing down. It's just like the Titanic sinking, okay? Once the physics of the situation became apparent, once it lost the Titanic, took in water in the hull, and it loses buoyancy. Just mathematically, I mean, it took a while, took a few hours, but mathematically, it has to sink. the economy has to bust. Um, I love all these idiots, and I'm talking about the so-called conservatives. The Rush Limbaughs and all these kinds of people. Who suddenly, figuring out that the Republican Party is a bunch of con men and scumbags and neo-con maniacs. But anyway, these other people, these Johnny-come-latelys, the Dick Morrises and these people on Fox News, everybody's figuring it out. The Johnny-come-latelys, now that it's becoming so obvious. But anyway, 20 years ago, the Federal Reserve, and that's just conspiracy theory. That's, those are conspiracy kooks. We can grow our way out of a debt. How the hell are you going to grow your way out of a system that's put you in perpetual debt? All right, it's the mathematical equivalent of being in a hole and digging it deeper. How are you going to get out of the hole? By digging it deeper? Okay, that's how stupid or moronic or just liars these people are. I mean, Paul Krugman at the New York Times. Okay, you have to go into debt to get out of debt. Do you realize how stupid that is? All right, so what I'm getting at is that the quote conspiracy, it's not hidden. Okay, in fact, it's so pervasive that it's so obvious that people just can't comprehend it. Hence my favorite movie, John Carpenter's They Live. Okay, now we're going to get into the occult conspiracy here in a little bit, and his prediction of 3 world wars. And again, for those of you that are keeping track, we've only had 2. Okay, but it looks like number 3 is well on its way, regardless of these mimbos and bimbos on all these news channels. Okay, so-called news channels with their endless coverage of this presidential clown show and this compulsive liar / psychopath Queen Jezebel, okay, known as Hillary Clinton, okay, but it's right here. It's here, okay. This is not legal tender by any means. It's a note of debt. Okay, when a dollar's issued, when a dollar's created, it's an issuance of debt. Okay, so in other words, the Federal Reserve loans money to its so-called member banks, and those member banks loan money, but they're creating money out of nothing and loaning it to the government or to these private banks. Okay, and I'm not getting too technical with it. I don't care to. I'm just giving you in principle. Okay, that's what it is. All right, so when they get on, when Queen Jezebel gets on and talks about helping the economy and helping the poor and all this whatever nonsense she's spewing, it's meaningless. Even Trump, okay, and I can't believe Trump is this stupid. Hillary's just a complete media whore and a political whore and a sellout, okay, and she'll do whatever her Bilderberg un-American genocidal complex masters tell her to do. Just like Pharaoh Barry, okay, just like the Pharaoh, of ancient Egypt. Okay, he was kind of the face, the image of the beast, if you will, or the image of the Antichrist, okay, which is really the people behind him, your Rockefeller, Rothschild, Soros, handlers, okay, the high priests of finance and political and media and everything else, okay. Image of the beast should sound familiar. I mean, that's right out of Revelation chapter 13. But anyway, it's just so pervasive. It's just so obvious. And again, I can't say this enough. And mathematically, that's not conspiracy theory. That's just basic math. Now people will laugh it off and ha ha ha. We'll get our way out of the debt and we'll grow our way out of it. And those, don't listen to those people's, those Federal Reserve, anti-Federal Reserve conspiracy kooks. But just think about it logically. How can you grow your way out of debt, or how can you say that debt doesn't matter? I mean, just if the debt doesn't matter, then why do we need to work? Why do we need to do anything? Just borrow enough money. I don't even know what the word would be, a quadrillion, whatever. I don't know the number exists. Just give everybody in America $1 million, and all of a sudden everybody's a millionaire. So that's ridiculous. That's just like kids at a Monopoly game just giving out paper money. Well, that's called hyperinflation. Well, there you go. That's your answer. Okay, but people are so trained and so dumbed down and drugged or whatever it is. The drugs in the water and the chemtrails and all that. And again, I don't want to go into that. I do read up on that stuff to kind of help explain some things. Just ultimately, it is a religious. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Satan blinds the people of the world and this sort of thing. But But that's just what it is, So when people sit here and they blame, Farrell Barry for the, the deficit and all these so-called conservatives, well, yeah, Farrell Barry's accelerating the process, but look, this system's been around since 1913. Okay, this societal moochers, these societal leeches called the Federal Reserve System that have been around for 100 years, and then funding all these colleges with the tax-exempt foundations, okay, the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, funding a lot of these, these neocon maniacs and of course, these, quote, liberal causes. But why would George Soros, one of the richest white guys in the world, why would he fund Black Lives Matter and MoveOn.org and all these so-called liberal organizations? Because these guys are they know they're playing these people like the idiots they are, okay? The radical, so-called radical feminist movement, the radical environmental movement. Why would the Rockefeller empire stand behind the United Nations, which they founded, and all these so-called leftist groups? I mean, it seems counterintuitive, but when you step back and look at it, it's not, because these groups are meant to take down the last bastion of hope for humankind and the last form of resistance to their plans for world takeover, okay, which is the nation formerly known as the United States, okay. And then when you read, I'm going to go off on a different tangent right now, but when you read like the Communist Manifesto and the Illuminati, okay, the stated goals of the Illuminati, okay, and they're one and the same. Now remember, Illuminati, what we talked about, it's nothing but the American, the American skull and bones, the American Illuminati right here, okay, founded on May 1st, 1776, okay. Let me just say this, okay? Maybe I'll call this the background for the Occult Conspiracy, because the group I'm talking about are the ones that are bringing us World War III, okay? But anyway, getting back to the Illuminati, okay? Remember Illuminati, illumination, all-seeing eye, ye shall be as gods, okay? The Great Pyramid, okay? Now, who were they palling around with? Maya Rothschild, who sent his 5 sons to the 5 major capitals in Europe at the time. I think it was Germany, Austria, France, Italy, and England. Okay, especially England. All right. He funded the Rockefeller and Morgan empires, and they spread out. Like an octopus. Those organizations spread out. And funded. They brought up all the media, the so-called liberal think tanks, and the liberals. As I was just saying. But getting back to you just trace it back, just go back to May 1st, 1776, the foundation of the Bavarian Illuminati, okay, and they kind of made a pact with the devil, and I mean that figuratively and literally, with Meyer Rothschild and this hanger around known as Robert Christian, okay, and I don't want to get into him right now, because I could spend hours talking about Robert Christian alone, okay, who I believe is Satan incarnate. I'll just come right out and say it. All right. And you can read about Robert Christian. I have a whole page on my site just to give out that information. I don't want to go off on that tangent right now. But old Robert's got a whole page 10. Okay, there's several books on that link alone on Robert Christian. Okay, but anyway, he was right in the middle of the mix and the foundation of the Bavarian Illuminati with the Rothschilds and Adam Weishaupt and the French Revolution and all that mess. But just to focus on the tenets of the Illuminati, the abolition of national borders. Well, that sounds familiar. Wasn't Queen Jezebel just talking about that last night? Didn't Trump bring that up? Okay, the abolition of private property, the abolition of religion, the abolition of the family. Okay, those are our so-called. Those are our real leaders, okay? Now, those are all liberal causes today. Now, that filters right down to the Communist Manifesto, okay? So when you read, let me see if I can find it on here real quick, the Communist Manifesto, and you go through it line by line, okay? I think it's on this page 11. I got so much information on this website. I have a chart, over the years I have a hard time keeping track of it myself. But anyway, from page 11, Okay, the New Age, and I go through the radical environmental movement and some other stuff. But there's a link on there called 1984, for example. Okay, and I go through 11 tenets right out of Orwell's 1984. Okay, which are basically the same with the Illuminati, which basically Illuminati spawned, communism, the so-called, the philosophy of the downtrodden. Okay, but that's only for academics and little, brainwashed little douchebags in college that believe there's college professors, they're Ford and Carnegie Endowment funded moronic professors, okay, that it's some kind of philosophy for the downtrodden, okay, like Mao and Stalin were downtrodden. No, they were looking at conglomerate control, okay, and then they in turn were controlled by the international bankers, okay, because communism got its start by the same Wall Street bankers that started Hitler. Okay, and in this book right here documents just Hitler alone. Okay, it's just a snapshot, but when you spread it out, I mean, and it makes sense. Okay, because what they're doing is they're coagulating and condensing control, and they're doing it through finance. Okay, through financing all these people, and then taking over their governments. Okay, if you think about it, I mean, you're just conglomerating power. And I'm not saying they're going to be successful. Okay, I never said that. In fact, Russia, the modern day Russia and China are kind of standing up to this international crime syndicate, these loan sharking operation known as the international bankers. Okay, and that's going to be the source of the impending World War III. And it's, again, I don't necessarily want to go off on that right now, but we're coming up to just the pure chaos in the world, and it's even getting more and more difficult to explain clearly. But anyway, getting back to the Communist Manifesto, if you go through the Communist Manifesto, and what I did here is I took Orwell's 1984, because the concepts in Orwell's 1984 are one and the same with the Communist Manifesto, one and the same with the Bavarian Illuminati. Okay, abolition of God. Okay, family destruction, no distinction between the sexes, and no marriage. Okay, let's just talk about that for a second. Okay, so you think these feminists, these so-called radical feminists, these self-hating, man-hating, leather-faced dykes. Okay, do you think why would the international banking syndicate, through things like the CIA and the Ford Foundation, why would they be interested in radical feminism? What the hell do they care what a bunch of miserable dykes have to say, and wanting to kill their babies and all this other thing? But this is huge. That was huge in Orwell's 1984, and that explains it. Okay, the destruction of marriage and the destruction of the family is really what it's all about. Okay, it's got nothing to do with women's rights. You think the Rockefeller Empire gives a frog's fat ass about women's rights? Dummies. But that's huge. That was huge in Orwell's 1984. Okay, so you create this tension between the sexes, and which is what's going on, and that's what you get. Okay, men and women. There's no passion. There's no difference between men and women, which is what's happening in our society. Okay, and that was huge to Orwell. But that's you destroy the family, then what happens? And the government comes in. You abolish God. The government comes in and fills that void. Okay, there is no atheism. All right, evolution, morons. You think evolution's about science? Progressive liberal idiots. Children ratting out their parents. That kind of is a extends from no distinction between the sexes and no marriage. Now you separate the sexes. You separate mom and dad. You've over 50% divorce rate in this nation. What is it, like 70 or 80% in the black community? With thanks to so-called liberal compassion, they've eliminated the black father in the black community. You can look what's happened. Hillary Clinton and her liberal friends, swoop in to save the day, and keep multi-generations of blacks, poor blacks, dependent on welfare and crack cocaine and Section 8 housing. Okay, that's not an accident. Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society. Okay, the subtitle of my first book, Great Society of the Undead. That's not an accident. Okay, that word great is a synonym for the devil, by the way. and I've explained that, the source of that information. Okay, that's why I labeled my book the quote Great Society of the Undead being the United Nations, and goes deeper than that. Actually, I don't really feel like getting into that right now, but just you can read about that in section 3 of my first book, They Live, Great Society of the Undead, and you'll find the links on my site. And in section 3, I go through that whole thing. Okay, that's another subject I can probably spend weeks talking about. All right. But anyway, historical revisionism, okay, the just pounding, especially on the founding fathers and the founding of this nation, the slave-owning racist and all this kind of thing. So by doing that, by revising the history of this country, okay, you not just knock the people, but you knock the founding documents, the very constitution that gives these people, including the useful idiots on the left, and gives them their rights and protection from the very government that they're trying to, the communist government that they're helping to implement. Okay, idiots. Okay, you're destroying the Constitution, guilt by association, because now the founders, in whatever work they did, Constitution, Declaration, United States of America itself, now it becomes a racist entity. Now it's to the point, and it's just happening, that you can't even stand for the national anthem. Okay, you can't raise an American flag at a football game. Okay, so the ooze, this ooze of these useful idiots, these Rockefeller, Soros, Carnegie, Ford-funded, useful academic ivory tower idiots, is finally starting to ooze through into our everyday life. Okay, this godlessness. All right, and again, it's the lords of chaos are being unleashed. Let me just put it to you that way. It's happening. Okay, it can't be stopped. It won't be stopped. Trump ain't gonna stop it. All right. At least that part of it's by design. Okay. Order out of chaos. And by the way, while I'm on it, the god Shiva, there's something called CERN over in Europe, and I forget what it stands for. It's all this particle physics, and they're trying to open up ripples in the universe. Okay. They're going beyond physics and getting into borderline spiritual stuff over there. It's kind of hard to explain, but they're accelerating particles, okay, to such a speed that they're trying to find and explain antimatter, getting into all kinds of weird stuff. But what's outside? What is what is prominent outside? The entrance. Is an image, okay, or a statue of the Indian god Shiva. Okay, now he is the god, he's a good god and a bad god. He's a good god, because he's about new creation, but he's a bad god because he's about destruction. So he wants to destroy the current order to bring in a new order. Okay. So think about that. I mean, that's the very concept of order out of chaos. Okay, and that's what's reflected in this Shiva is equivalent to this guy right here, this all-seeing eye right here. Okay. And that's a concept known as archetypes. Okay, the religions of the world are really pointing to the same thing. They're all pointing to the Garden of Eden. Okay, Greek, Roman, Egyptian mythology, Indian mythology, Persian mythology. It's all pointing. It's just different variations of the story of the Garden of Eden. Okay. I know that's hard to swallow and hard to digest, but that's really what's going on here. Okay, and again, and I that gets you into, now you get into like Steve Quayle territory and these kinds of people, L.A. Marzulli, and you can Google these people or stevequayle.com if you're really interested in going down those roads. But I do enough. I'm going off enough tangents right now that But anyway, that's where this is all going. Okay. So remember, in Revelation 17, the beast that was and was not and yet is really a reference to Apollo, or Apollyon in Revelation chapter 9. Okay. But anyway, so this is to kind of tie us together again. This is the quote great society they're looking to rebuild. They're looking to explode or exterminate or destroy. Shiva, the spirit of Shiva, they're looking to destroy the current order. Okay, and I got news for you. That means 90% of the world's population has to go. And where do we see that? Right here. the anti-Ten Commandments of the Georgia Guidestones, okay, in Northeast Georgia, Elberton, Georgia, okay, brought to us by this guy, Robert Christian. Okay, Robert Christian brought us this, and then, March 22nd, 1980, etched in stone right here, March 22nd, 322. So all this stuff connects, okay? So the same group that's bringing you the, this Orwellian / communist / Illuminati superstate, okay, that's looking to kind of control us, keep us asleep, and, and keep us under wraps, and, until such time as they pull the trigger and start World War III to try, the spirit of Shiva, and try to destroy the entire world, or 90% of it, so they can, the world can be rebuilt in their image under their god, Lucifer, is really what's going on here. Okay, that may be funny. Okay, that's fine. Again, this is all in the Bible, and remember the 3 principles to watch, to listening to this show. Number 1 is the Bible is the infallible word of God. Number 2 is Israel, physical Israel, not God's chosen people. All right, and that's another one that cracks me up. That Israel is God's chosen people, and people are probably thinking, what is this guy talking about? He's forgetting about Israel, and he doesn't know what he's talking. No, okay. What part of John chapter 8, you have your father the devil. I mean, what part am I missing there? Talking about the Jews, or John the Baptist calls them a den of vipers and thieves, and Jesus, calls them children of hell in Matthew 23. I mean, what needs to be interpreted? What gray area is there? Okay, I'm not being anti-Semitic. Okay, I'm not being anti-Israel. I mean, Israel's. I hope they, and there is, 1948. There was. That is biblical in nature, but that's encapsulated in Ezekiel chapter 36, and I don't want to go off on that right now. But anyway, that's principle number 2. Okay, and that segues right into principle number 3, which is kind of where we are. That there's no doubt that the Mystery Babylon of Revelation, the United States, is right in the middle of this whole mess known as end times events, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. And it's for reasons that I'm going through, okay? So the godlessness that's come about as a result of evolution and the like, okay, and the eugenics and all that, and the abortion, okay? It's the same group, okay? Now, I started, remember this, I'm just getting back to the list here. Abolition of God, destruction of the family, no distinction between the sexes, children ratting out their parents. Okay, think about the kids learning about global warming, global cooling, climate change, and getting assignments and coming home and reporting back to the little public school teachers, what their parents are doing about recycling, how they're not helping the planet and they're destroying the kids' futures. What the hell does David Rockefeller really give a rat's ass about the environment? Okay, the descendant of the Standard Oil Empire. I mean, how stupid do you people have to be to think George Soros, David Rockefeller, this Canadian Maurice Strong, and all these other rich, multi-billion, multi-trillionaire rulers of the world, rulers of the Federal Reserve System, how stupid do you have to be to believe that those people are philanthropists and concerned about the environment? It's 100% about control. Okay. Ministry of Truth. Okay, we got the controlled corporate news. Okay, the coverage of this so-called this presidential election, this presidential clown show. I mean, enough. Do we even need to go through there? And of course, that kind of, kind of attaches to this, the control of the so-called liberal professors. I mean, you see all these polls, these so-called liberal colleges, the Ivy League colleges, and what is it, like 10 to 1 or 20 to 1? They're all progressives and liberals, and they're all, Democrats and all. Well, why the hell do you think that is? Okay, poor black people and Ivy League liberal whites. That's the power base of Queen Jezebel and his half-white con artist, this phantom Pharaoh Barry. Okay, that's their power base. Okay, well, what do you think I already explained, the Great Society, what that really is, a purposeful destruction of the black family and black society as a whole so they can be controlled. Okay, so black people that are lucky enough to make it out of the womb and not be aborted per Margaret Sanger's, American Birth Control League, or what we know today as Planned Parenthood, are segregated to a life of poverty and heroin addiction and public housing. Okay, and affirmative action. Okay, because now a lot of these poor blacks are getting into colleges and all this nonsense and Black Lives Matter and all this stuff. But again, you follow the purse strings, and the same names, the same thing keeps popping up. Rich white guys. Okay, no nation, megalomaniac, devil worshipping white guys. But anyway, centralized economic control. Well, just getting back to the Ministry of Truth, I know I could keep on those tangents, but the point was, that's why you got so many liberal, so-called liberal professors, in these colleges, because they're being funded by the Ford Foundation and the Carnegie Endowment and the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. And I just explained, nothing gets you communist society faster than an American liberal. Stupid. Dumbasses. Centralized economic control. I've explained that at length. Federal Reserve System. Okay. Central political control. All right, that's a joke. Okay, that the notion that we have two separate political parties in this nation is really a joke, and that's one good thing about the Trump campaign. Disagree with him, and I'm not 100% sold on him, but has he ever illustrated the fact that we have one political party in this nation, okay, known as the Democrat-Republican Party? Because really what this election was supposed to be was Queen Jezebel sailing into the election with another Mitt Romney-like douchebag, another Mitt Romney-like loser in the form of what was the other Bush, the descendant of the Nazi war criminal Prescott Bush, the grandson. What was his name? Jeb Bush in Florida. Another skull and bones Nazi worshipper, descendant of a grandson of a Nazi war criminal, Prescott Bush. Okay, who worked for the Harriman, Brown Brothers Harriman, which was one of the many American industries that brought this guy to power. Okay, so you're getting real news here, in other words. Okay, you're not going to hear this on Fox News. But anyway, central political control. Okay, just leave Trump out of it. It would have been Jeb Bush, this pantyways, dry as a bone douchebag in the spirit of Mitt Romney, just there to make people think they have a choice. Well, Queen Jezebel was going to, run circles around him and sail right into the White House. The problem is Trump has kind of upset their plans a little bit. Okay, I happen to think he's the equivalent of a speed bump on an American highway to hell. Okay, and our elites are driving like an 18-wheeler right over it. But that's just my analogy. But he is a little bit of a resistance. He's a little bit of a nuisance nonetheless. Okay, but anyway, the central political control is already here. Okay, leave Trump out of it. Just imagine what this election would be. Okay, and then you get the sellouts in Congress, the rhinos, the Republicans in name only. You got this scam artist, this half-white phantom Farrell Barry running around breaking every conceivable law in the book. Wars everywhere, illegal drone strikes, calling people that oppose abortion domestic terrorists. Okay, rewriting laws on his own, issuing executive orders out the wazoo. Okay, ignoring Supreme Court and federal court rulings and letting millions and millions of illegal aliens in. Okay, and meanwhile, these so-called Republicans, the so-called opposition party, does nothing. It's one political party. It's under the guise of central political control. Then we have three world superstates. Okay, and of course these wars, these three world superstates. There was Eurasia. I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but it was basically Europe, Asia, and America, and they were always at war. Okay, remember in Orwell's 1984, there was just, Big Brother and Goldstein or whatever, and it was endless war. Now, endless war, think about that. The United States is in these pointless, endless wars. This so-called, these exceptional people, okay, these international bankers, and maybe we'll get into that next show. Now, this is kind of the setup, they gave us three world wars, the so-called, quote, Great War, World War I. There's that word great again, which really was the setup for World War II. It's basically what World War I did that that 20 years or so between 1918 and say 1938, 1939, when Hitler really started cranking up his, American-made war machine, was really just a respite between two world wars. Okay. So in other words, you have this endless wars, and of course, right after, then you had Korea, which was a waste. Okay, then you had an even bigger waste in Vietnam. Okay, we're supposed to stop communism. Meanwhile, the Rockefellers and the others were selling arms and munitions to Russia and China. We're turning right around and selling them to North Vietnam. Meanwhile, the Rockefeller-controlled press was telling everybody, oh, we got to go fight communism. Although we can't let communism spread. Meanwhile, they're funding all these Communist Party USA and these other useful douchebags in the American Ivy League universities, as I just mentioned. Okay, so they're transnational. Okay, it's all about control. Okay, and now just the latest tool in their tool chest, besides monetary control, is their sudden concern for the environment. And this global warming, global cooling, climate change scam, which is nothing more than a play on population control. Okay, both in terms of numbers and politically. But anyway, then you had the memory hole. Remember the selective people that opposed the central government. Okay, they were tortured and sent down the memory hole. Okay, so what do we have now? I mean, we have Obama and the National Defense Authorization Act and this concept of, quote, domestic terrorists. I mean, you had these 9/11, box-cutting dupes, the so-called 9/11, 19 guys, 15 of the 19 are Saudis, somehow, escaped the greatest intelligence apparatus in the history of the world at the same time. Got on 4 different airplanes, supposedly, and crashed them into all these places. Not to get into the whole 9/11 thing right now, but what does that perpetuate? Besides the continuation of the concept of the endless war, it's given us the so-called Patriot Act. Now, undesirables, people that are undesirable that speak out against the so-called federal government, can be selectively killed or imprisoned without due process. That's one of Pharaoh Barry's executive orders. Okay, and in 2009 Missouri Information Analysis Center report, fusion centers, that was done in combination with, the Department of Hussein State Security, or the DHSS. Okay, they can memory hold people, and that's all, quote, legal, because Pharaoh Barry read an executive order to cover it. Okay, drone strikes against American citizens and non-citizens overseas. So what Pharaoh Barry has done is essentially negated, the right to a trial, and that whole inconvenience known as the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution. So anyway, so you have people, being currently, the setup is there, and it's already happening. Okay, many mysterious deaths, for example, of people that are covering the scandals of Pharaoh Barry and Queen Jezebel. Okay, that there'll be no shit about the trail of death that follows Queen Jezebel. I'm not talking about her support for baby murder known as partial birth abortion. I'm talking about these Clinton death chronicles, the dozens and dozens of people that were going to testify or exposing Queen Jezebel, and they end up killing themselves with gunshots and ballistics that make no sense, or they end up getting disappeared or suicided, etc., etc. These people are being flushed down the memory holes. Political dissidents, which at some point is going to include, conspiracy kooks like yours truly, are going to get flushed down the memory hole. Okay, so that setup, that framework is there. Okay, and it's been there. And I'm going to say, the most famous person right now that's gone down the memory hole is President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Okay, because, JFK was, he was against the Federal Reserve System. He was against the CIA, and he was against the Vietnam War. Okay, that's a big no-no. Okay, a president trying to take his job seriously. And, of course, he was killed in broad daylight. The only bullet in the history of the world that just contradicted Newton's laws of motion and the law of conservation of mass and all this other thing. So of course it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald, but it was a message to his successor, say Lyndon Baines Johnson, this so-called Democrat that gave us the Great Society, okay, the Rockefeller tool known as Lyndon Baines Johnson, okay. So again, the Great Society was never about welfare. It was never about helping black people. It's about control, okay. Because now you control the black population. Now they all vote liberal Democrat to keep the welfare payments coming. So not only does that cause more loans and more money for the international bankers, it controls a large segment of the population and controls at least one major political party, okay, keeps them in power. All right. Then you have the 2 minutes of hate, okay, which is just think about the class warfare, okay, and the warfare between races, what Farrell Barry and Queen Jezebel are trying to do to this nation, okay. Saul Alinsky, who dedicated his book to Lucifer, literally, okay, the perpetual revolution, okay. Just look at this nation. It's rich against poor. It's young against old, okay, with Social Security. But when you trace it all back, it all traces back to the Federal Reserve System, okay, selectively picking winners and losers, and who gets paid and who gets the welfare and who doesn't. But they deflect, okay. They send the hatred, okay. They disseminate hatred. So in other words, instead of everybody pointing at the Federal Reserve System saying, no, you're the ones that are controlling the money supply, they control the media and the so-called academics, again, through the tax-exempt foundation, so people don't know what the hell's going on. So they end up hating each other. So look at the conflicts. We have black against white. We have Hispanic against white and black. We have, black against everybody, young against old, rich against poor, okay, men against women, okay. Just think about all the conflicts that are, like, what is that? It's the 2 minutes of hate. People, people just hating each other, okay? And that's what it is, because when everybody's looking at each other and hating each other and blaming each other and getting involved in these stupid, inane debates, when the source of the problem is right in front of us, the source of the problem is in your wallet right now. This debt-based scam known as the Federal Reserve System. But that's how you maintain control of the masses. Okay, that's how a very that crusty old 100-year-old devil-worshipping genocidal psychopath David Rockefeller and his little fiefdom, Soros and the rest of them. These guys can barely walk. They look like death itself. But that's how you control people. That's how you control the masses. That's how you control the so-called most powerful military in the world. You issue its money. Mayor Meyer Rothschild. He said, give me the power to control a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws. Do you think he didn't know what he was talking about? So again, that's on. I'm going to say page 11. Okay, the New Age nature worship. Okay. But again, there's a method to my madness. Okay, and it belongs there. Because when you follow logic down to the environmental movement, and the global warming, global cooling, climate change scam, it all starts to make sense to an extent, okay. But ultimately, it makes sense and it doesn't make sense, okay. But have no doubt, their goal, okay, is the takedown of the American society, which they've done. Okay, everything I've said, if you go through the checklist, and I did it in chapter 2 of my first book, that I took the tenets of the Communist Manifesto, which are pretty much similar to what I just read. Orwell's 84, and the tenets of the American Illuminati. They're all basically the same. I mean, there's variations, and there's one has more, one has less, but it's all basically the same. All right. So that makes sense in sense of control, and then now they want to start World War III. And that's just how, again, getting back to Revelation 17, 18, that's how I've laid it out. Okay. So that's kind of the framework. That's the background, okay, of the psychopaths that we'll talk about next time about the occult conspiracy. Okay, but you can read about it, on my on the site. Okay, if it's page 9 on my site, boxofsunglasses.com. It's called the Occult Conspiracy, and it basically traces world history again back to the Garden of Eden through today, and actually tomorrow, and the way things are going with the Russians, sailing their fleet right down the English Channel. Basically, middle finger to to the British Navy and the Americans. Okay, Pharaoh Barry and his transgender army. Okay, who knows how much time we have? Okay, because the Russians are going to get to a point and they're going to figure it out if they haven't already. Okay, just remember, this is me talking. I'm just some dunce sitting here in my home office. Okay, you think Vladimir Putin doesn't know what the hell's going on? All right, but anyway, there's going to come a point where the Russians are going to just as a matter of survival. I'm not saying the Russians are 100% perfect, but they're going to say these people are nuts. Okay, Pharaoh Barry and Queen Jezebel and these psychopaths. All right, starting wars everywhere. In Syria, Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan. And that goes for the Bushes too, but I'm not singling. I just Pharaoh Barry and Queen Jezebel are the biggest loudmouths in the news these days. But the Bushes got us involved too. The American Illuminati skull and bones Bush family. Okay. But anyway, the Russians are sitting back and they're saying that these people are insane. Right? These people they just want war. They want wars. And you know what? He's right. And they're the so-called exceptional people. I know this is not going to make the neocon maniacs, the Bill Cristols and, these little roundtable groups you see on Fox News. I know it's not going to make them happy to hear, but just because the United States starts a war, we're supposed to wave the flag and, eat hot dogs and support the troops and all this other thing. But, I'm going to be very careful here. The active military is some of the best people we have, but they're being used as a mercenary army, essentially. Okay, what strategic purpose or does a war in Syria, an undeclared war, by the way. This is Pharaoh Barry just kind of using laws as he sees fit. Okay, just ignoring Congress and starting all these wars illegally. Okay, you're on the verge of a major war with Russia, and there's no war declared. There's no justification for us being in Syria except Pharaoh Barry and his sidekick, the skull and bone Secretary of State, John Kerry, another Northeast liberal, multi-millionaire white guy. Okay. So a multi-millionaire liberal. I thought liberals were, supposed to be about redistributing wealth and fairness and all that. Well, just like in Orwell's Animal Farm, everybody's equal, but some are more equal than others. So that's another effing joke. Liberals, how stupid they can be. But anyway, John Kerry's another raving lunatic. All right, Secretary of State. Right after Queen Jezebel. I mean, we're creating these power vacuums, but Russia's not going to stand by and let their ally, their best ally in the Middle East, Syria, go by the wayside. Okay. But I happen to think that people in charge, all right, I'm no geopolitical expert, they're not this stupid. All right. They're not that stupid, and I don't think it's got very little to do with maintaining control of the petrodollar and all the stuff you hear on these economic channels, and getting back at Assad for not allowing some gas pipeline to go through Syria or whatever. Okay, I'm going to have to say this is the purposeful setup to World War III. And according to the proper interpretation of Revelation 17 and 18, where the whore, i.e. the United States, the mother of abominations, okay, the cage of every unclean and dirty bird. Okay, dirty birds were another name for so-called ancient aliens or ancient, gods of Greek and Roman mythology, Egyptian mythology. Okay, the home of every unclean and dirty bird. Here's St. John's Divine Cathedral in New York City. And I'm pulling phrases out of Revelation 17 and 18. The beast shall hate the whore. Okay, the country's become the mother of harlots, the cage of every unclean bird. Okay, they shall burn her with fire, and her destruction shall come about in 1 hour. Okay, we went through all this language. Okay, and that seems to be what's happening. Okay, because the Russians are looking at us. They're saying these people are crazy. All right, and of course, you're not hearing this on Fox News. All you're getting is endless nonsense. And I guarantee, more waste of time nonsense on this poll and that poll and what Trump said and what Queen Jezebel said and, experts, Democratic pollsters and Republican pollsters and experts, but nobody's talking on these so-called major media about the Russian fleet sailing right through the English Channel, right to the Mediterranean, about the impending war. Okay? But I'm talking about it, Occult Conspiracy Kooks are talking about it. All right. And I'll just conclude once again, God's simple salvation plan is on top of the site. Okay. I think it's pretty much on every page of the site. So no matter what page you click on, you'll see it at the top there. Okay. That's probably the most important thing to get out of all this. Okay. Because at some point, you just got to step back, and you can't deal with it on a human level. You just can't deal with it. You get to a breaking point, all right, and that's just the way it is, all right. And I'm not happy about this. I can't say no. I don't enjoy this. I don't want to be sitting here right now, and I have my reasons for doing so, and that's not really a major concern right now. But be that as it may, I mean, if I see a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake coming, and I sit here and do nothing. Doesn't mean I'm happy about it. Doesn't mean I want it to happen. All right. But it's happening. Okay. Anyway, boxofsunglasses.com. Most Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And if I miss or the show doesn't, all the archive shows are on my YouTube channel. They're all linked up on the homepage of the site. Okay. Good night and God bless.